Good evening, hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today I'm going to go over the best monster in the game, Teostra. That's not up for debate. Teostra's king. Like, hands down, he's the best. Anyway, you should know the drill by now, so let's just get going. Starting with Teostra's spawn, he can start in one of three phases. Either a regular Teo, a Flame Aura Teo, and a Blast Teo. On the Elder's Recess map, when Teo flies in, he can either land and sit down, which is great for setups, or turn left or right before moving on to the next area. Ultimately, the spawn here doesn't matter too much, as you can usually catch him as he's landing, unless you're Hunting Horn and you have to pre-buff, but that's like the only exception. Now, on Wildspire Waste, Teo can spawn in pretty much the same ways, but his size and position can change a little bit. The ideal spawn here is when Teo starts far enough back that when you drop down the hole from Camp 17, you just land right in front of him. Again though, this isn't a huge deal breaker either way, as you can just tag his tail. His spawns are pretty much fine either way, there's just some preference here if you're trying really hard to min-max. From here we go into his roar. Teostra shares the same skeleton as other Elder Dragons like Lunastra, Kushala, and Val. When you engage him, he's going to rear up, and there are three good cues for you to dodge his roar. You can check his paw position, but once they stop moving and they go to their peak, you can roll that way. You can check his wings, and they're going to start to flutter, and then you can dodge. Or you can go off an audible cue. This is actually what I do. Kind of like Diablos, there will be a slight roar buffer before the actual hitbox of the roar comes out. So if you listen really carefully and you have good reflexes, you can just roll once you hear the start of that roar. I'm going to try to show you that now. Now Teostra has two other roars. The Enrage Roar, which is at 860 damage, and the Power Up Roar, which honestly I don't know what triggers that. It might be like a timing or something, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, the roar here is the same, but these ones come out a bit quicker because Teo's already enraged at that point, and Teo gets a 10% increased attack speed modifier when he's enraged, and that does speed up the roar animations. A lot of people, myself included, have troubles dodging the Power Up Roars, and that's usually because you're timing it rather than trying to look for a cue. Now, something else to take note about Teo's roars is that he will always follow up with an attack after the Enraged Roar and the initial roar, but not the Power Up Roars. When he does a Power Up Roar, he gets one of his auras, and then he'll just stand there, menacingly, for just a moment. This is usually long enough time for you to roll away from his next attack, or just get ready for whatever he's doing, which is pretty nice. So you managed to get past the roars, good job. Let's get on to Teo's moves. Each of Teostra's three auras will change his moveset. The regular Teo is kind of like a balanced Teo. He has all the regular moves, nothing really special here, except that if he jumps in the air, he's pretty much always going to do that Fire Breath attack before charging down, unless he's enraged. This state of Teostra also uses Flame Breath attacks pretty frequently, which is actually really good for setups. Other than that though, nothing special going on here. This is your baseline Teo. Now the Flame Aura Teo, this is the anti-gunner setup. This form blocks projectile attacks from everywhere around its core. You can still hit his face and like the tips of its wings and the tail, but that's about it. Ideally you only want to hit the face anyway, but the Flame Aura also blocks the neck region, so hitting from the sides will cause your ammo to get negated that way as well. Even if you're aiming at the face and you just barely miss, no dice. This aura is why you don't really use Pierce elemental ammo on Teostra. If you shoot his face, the Flame Aura will block the bullets from going any further, so you can't really get any Pierce in. And using water or ice ammo without pierces is just garbage. Other things about Flame Aura Teo is that Teostra's bite attacks will not have extended reach because they're going to have extra flames coming out of it. This usually isn't a problem, but the quick bite he can do is really nasty in this state, especially against Arc-Tempered Teostra. Now finally, the Blast Aura Teostra. This is the anti-melee setup, and it's particularly nasty. Teo is very fond of moving fast in this form. Charges, drifting, and jumps are all very plentiful. It doesn't help that any move he does is going to start littering the ground with Blast Blight clouds. In this state, Teo's paw swipes is also the real killer. It comes out really fast, and if it hits you, it's going to detonate the Blast Blight and hit you, so you're going to take a huge hit and a huge amount of KO buildup. Even if it doesn't hit you, it's still going to leave the cloud behind, which makes staying near him also dangerous. If you get bopped by this, you're in for a world of hurt. Arc-Tempered Teo will basically one-hit KO any gunner with this, and two-hit KO any melee with this. Despite being anti-melee, this state also has two ranged attacks. The Isolated Supernova, which any gunner will tell you they've at least eaten that once, and the Blast Blight Line, which is certainly trouble for melee, but Teo usually uses it as a ranged attack, and you can just kind of sidestep it as a melee for the most part. It's usually not that big of an issue. Anyway, Arc-Tempered Teostra also has two new moves in the state. One I like to call the Smother Bomb, where he'll run up to you before putting down a ton of Blast Blight and detonating it. This is really easy to punish, since he's always going to do a little small roar after the attack. But he does run at you and can put you in between his legs, which kind of sucks, so you can get stuck in him. The other attack is an Evade, where he jumps back and leaves behind a cloud of Blast Blight. This was a move Teostra used to have back in G-Rank games, but honestly I think it gives you more of a breather than anything. It seems like common knowledge stuff, but I'm sure some people didn't realize that Teostra will prioritize some moves over others when he changes states. Now you can break these auras with either Elder Seal, which is dumb because Teo isn't weak to Dragon and he does power up roars pretty often to regain those auras back. It's just a waste of time. The other way you can remove the aura is by getting Topples, which is the main focus of Teostra's fight. Like other Elder Dragons, Teostra will topple if you damage his head, making him flail on the ground for about 5 head bobs, or 7 if you get him out of an aerial attack. This is huge for DPS, so obviously keeping him down as much as possible is the name of the game. His head stagger is a value of 400 for a regular Teostra, and I think it's about 800 for Arc-Tempered, maybe 760, it's around there. Anyway, Teostra is special in that causing a stagger by going past the threshold will cause him to flinch, but the second one will cause the topple. This is kind of unique to Teostra, and I honestly don't know why this is the case, but do know that's just how he works, and that aerial staggers will always dump, you don't have to get 2. The way to keep Teostra down for optimal amounts of time is to make sure you can cause a stagger as soon as he stands back up. So if you can count your damage and set up so that the next hit will cross the threshold as he gets up, you can flinch him, and so you only have to deal about 4 more damage to cause a topple. Otherwise, if you just cross the threshold as he's getting up, you have to go through 400 damage to cause a flinch, and then you have to go through 400 more damage to bring him down. There are some cases where you can get back-to-back topples, but I honestly don't know how or why, aside from a horn break. If you cause a horn break, which is the one where you cross the threshold for the head when Teo is below 20% HP, he's immediately going to topple, regardless if you got the stagger first or not. Also, if Teo is already down when you broke the horn, the next stagger will also immediately cause a topple and put him back down. You don't have to set up 2. These are the only 2 cases I know for sure where you can bypass that first flinch rule, but other statuses may be able to do it as well, I just don't really know. Do note that the staggers on the other parts of his body do not count towards the one needed on the head before you can topple, so you really want to just go full Unga Bunga on the head. Also, super side note, Part Breaker does not do anything for Elder Dragon heads. You can't break the horns until they're under 20% anyway, so getting extra part damage literally does nothing. It doesn't help with staggers, it doesn't help with crossing thresholds, you're not going to break the head earlier, that's just how it works. Now if you don't remove his auras, he does his infamous supernova, which occurs after like a minute of having his auras up, so don't let that happen. Good news is that it dispels all your auras once it's done, but never let him get a nova off, it just means you're not doing enough damage. One other last key feature of Teostra's fight is that he's got a lot of dead zones. His flame attacks are great for punishing, as I'm sure you all already know. You can tell if Teo's going to do a large flame blast because he's always going to slightly reposition before doing so. It looks like his old Monster Hunter AI code where the monster has to turn to face you before doing an attack, so it's super obvious when it's coming. Now his other fire attacks that are short range have dead zones kind of near the sides of his face too, not directly in front, but just to the sides and you're fine. This is also true for the counter bites in the Flame Aura mode. Just kind of stick to his cheeks and you'll be fine. Teo that spams flame moves is the best AI you can ask for. Alright, well that's basically all the ins and outs of Teostra. It's the best fight in the game, it's super hyper, I love this fight. Anyway, I hope you learned something about the fight. Good luck out there, hunters, I'll see you next time.